Hey guys, welcome to the Seven Figure Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're sitting with Michael Hamilton. This is a gentleman that moved here from California. He started in real estate about 10 years ago, but he started selling real estate about 7. He's grown this powerful team here in the state of Maine, and he's just expanded into Florida. Stick around to the end so he can show you how he's going to connect Maine to Florida. It's not as hard as you think, and there's business out there. Michael, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting down and understanding your business more and how you do things, and just really understanding what is it about real estate that you love, and how it's kind of changed your life over the last, I think 7 years now.
Yeah, unofficially, like 3 years before that, my wife and I sort of stumbled into accidentally mid-range flipping stuff.
Okay.
Bought the right time, sold, made money. We're like, whoa, we didn't really do much to have that happen. And then did that another time. And then we moved to Maine. We did it with our primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of discovering the power of real estate accidentally, because there's certainly no way I would have earned the amount of money I captured in the market,
right,
those couple of times.
So tell me, did you grow up in Maine originally?
I did. Well, Pennsylvania. I'm not a native Mainer. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
Almost 7 years old, moved here. We landed in South Portland. Then I had my formative years in Cape Elizabeth and Freeport, Falmouth, kind of bounced my way up the coast. And then when I was 19, I moved to California to pursue my Hollywood dreams.
Nice. How long were you out there for?
19 to, 27.
So you gave it a run.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there a while. Had a definitely interesting experience. The business, had a production company, had a health and wellness center. Wrote some screenplays, did some TV shows. Met my wife. Had a bunch of kids. I hit a certain point in the entertainment industry where I was no longer reaching for something. I was sort of sitting there.
Sure.
And the lack of satisfaction had not gone away.
Okay.
I was still sort of just like, well, I thought when I arrived here, I would feel fulfilled.
Sure. And
instead I was like working more, separated from my family even more, traveling more. And just like, I don't know if this is really what I want to be doing.
Okay.
So Lauren and I, my wife, took a hard look at where we were and what we were doing. And I had, at that point, started the Health and Wellness Center as a second stream of income. And I just felt like I wanted to be someplace I really loved.
Okay.
And so we actually did not at first look to Maine to come back, because I had been in California at that, for over a decade at that point. We looked at, we kind of had like a, pros and cons checklist. Like, should not be this, should definitely be this. It brought us to Colorado. It brought us to Oregon. And I'm kind of going through it. And my wife and I went to her brother's wedding. And it was the first time that we had all made an effort to be together in a long time, which was unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
And it was so nice, and see the kids, see him, and see everybody. And it was just like, and we're having this conversation on the side about where should we go. And I was like, do we really want to move to a random state where nobody is and start over?
Right.
Or should we look at Maine?
Yeah.
And so we looked at Maine, and I told my wife, hey, before we can move to Maine, you really need to see the winter. I know it's,
where's she from? Is she from California?
I know you've seen some Lifetime movies, Christmas movies, and it's all cute. But yeah, she's from California,
Okay.
California born and raised. So we came over Christmas. We stayed for like 21 days, maybe something like that. And we got lucky because we got almost 2 feet of snow while we were here.
Oh, wait, so she understood. Yeah.
She got the full picture.
Yeah.
We lost power for over a week in Freeport. I'll never forget. We woke up that morning, and she goes out. She looks at it. And she's like, "It looks like a winter wonderland." I was like, "Yep." And now the work begins. She's like, what do you mean? And then you could hear someone on the street cutting boughs.
Yeah.
Zzz. She's like, what is that? Oh, they're clearing the street because the boughs have come down and covered the street. So she did that. She loved it. She's like, I want to do this. We moved back to Maine with my family. And when we moved back, I was actually planning on kind of taking the favorite part of my health and wellness center and then recreating only that in Maine.
Sure.
I wanted to do a family fitness center because I liked the parts of that where people were sort of choosing and invested in their own improvement.
Yeah.
I disliked the stuff where like people weren't enrolled.
Sure.
And getting better and you showing up every week and you're like, I really want to help you, but you need to do something.
Yeah.
So I thought I would do that. A family fitness center. It would also, I planned on having like a kids center and a barbell club. And that way someplace I could be, my kids could come in after school. We'd all be together in my head. And I had this friend at the time who was our realtor. And she's like, I think it's all a really great idea. Stuff takes time in Maine. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, it's kind of a newer concept here to have like an expensive it's kind of like what Foley's is now. This was going to be, and ironically in Saco, but she's like, it will take you a while, Michael. And so just in my head right then, I was like, man, I just spent how many years building in California, spending the reason I'm coming here is because I don't want to miss these important years of my kids.
Right.
Do I want to spend 5 years from the ground up on a new business?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do. But what am I going to do?
Right.
So I heard her, thankfully. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I don't know if I really want to be the person pushing something new in an area that may or may not really want it. And I was like, but what am I going to do? She's like, well, what about real estate?
Right.
And I was like, oh, I don't know. I have any experience of that. I didn't study that. And she's like, it's everything you already have done, but just put together.
Sure.
It's sales, it's marketing, it's taking care of people, it's figuring out where they are and where they want to be. And she's like, so you've done all those things, you just haven't done them related to this thing.
Sure.
And on top of that, you can get licensed in like a month.
Right.
I was like, that's helpful. So we went back to California. I did all my licensing online while we were still there. I came back. I was going to be on her team. And that changed quickly. Within like 2 months, it was clear that I was on my own real estate journey. Yeah. But then I was left. The funny thing, anyone who's new, here's the first. You learn nothing about getting business in real estate school. Never. At all. Ever. No. You learn about how to not go to real estate jail a little bit.
Correct.
And then they mention a little bit vaguely this idea of lead generation. And then you get out and you're like, cool, what do I do?
Yeah, what do I do now?
So I was there and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I ended up working with this girl, Melanie Fletcher, whose husband was a builder. And so we kind of came together. And the great thing was she taught me so much about like luxury marketing. Sure. Everything that he built was at the time probably over 800,000. Yeah. Now it's probably like 1.2. Sure. And it was nice and it was clean and I learned that from her and I learned how to kind of give white glove service to people. Yeah. I learned still nothing about lead generation because this was not something she had to do. And so we would have little meetings and I'd be like, so, and she'd be like, well, so-and-so's building and we have this going on. I'm like, cool. How do I get clients? Yeah. And she's like, oh, well, I don't know. So Ann Shinkett called her and invited her to a business planning seminar. Yeah. And she was like, Ann, you're barking up the wrong tree. Like, I'm good, but you know who you really should reach out to? Like, you should call my partner, Michael. He should go to this and he should learn from this. So I went, and that was the first time I actually heard, hey, these are the activities, right? This is how you figure out the math of where you want to go and how you get there. Still didn't really understand exactly what that meant. Still couldn't immediately right away do it for myself. but at least I felt like I had some directions then.
So let me just pause you there. So the class that you've taken is Business Planning Clinic.
Yes.
KW, the Keller Williams Business Planning Clinic.
At KW. I was not at KW.
Yep.
I was invited by Ann. Yeah.
And so how many times have you taken that class at this point?
At least 6.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's something I do every year.
Yeah.
So it's the one class that I take every year.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't even call it. It's an exercise.
Yeah, 100%. Like, how much business do you want to do this year? Let's go figure it out.
Yeah. Like, what are you gonna do? And a bold is this way a little bit for me now too. Like so many of the tenets of bold, thankfully, I do know. So there's going to be large swaths of time where new information's not coming at me.
Sure.
But I use the time to do those things that I otherwise maybe wouldn't do. Okay, well, I know this exercise. Let me take some notes now.
Yeah.
What about this thing over here I never have time to think about?
Right.
What about this, thing I wanted to write and do that I haven't done? Oh, well, now let me pop back into paying attention because that's a new idea, or I like that thing.
Sure.
So I'll do that with business planning too. If they're doing the elementary of this, I start finishing what is my growth plan? What is my thing?
Yes. Okay. So Ann invites you in to go to this business planning clinic, and you listen to it, and you figure out, oh, these are the activities I need to get business.
Yep.
Okay. And then do you just start going out and doing those activities? I mean, what does that look like?
Oh no, Nick. It took me probably 3 years to learn the lesson. I was always getting ready to get ready. And I could do that infinitely. And the most stark example of it, I switched brokerages quite a few times in the first couple of years too, because I was always like, I needed the perfect thing to launch, right? Like, well, I need the technology to be right, and I need to make sure I really understand this conversation, and I need to make sure I have all these things in place, and I need my headshots, and blah, 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 like all this, everything has to be good, and then I can
the 80%.
Meanwhile, I mean, I trickled in business my first couple of years. I did enough of the right things in some pipelines to have some stuff come in, but I was not just doing. And one time I switched brokerages because they used a particular CRM. And I was like, this. And then I spent all this time trying to create my automations in that CRM. And then like 2 months after I got there, I had nothing in my pipeline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what good is all of this automation if there's nothing to freaking automate coming in?
Correct.
And that was the deepest that cut really hit, where I was like, I'm never, like, if I have a pencil and a notebook and some sort of communication, I don't care what it is, my phone, mailing, texting, something that I can talking to people, I can get business.
Right.
Yes, it can always be improving, but if I'm not doing that, I don't get to do this.
Sure.
And I've been refining that reality now ever since I had it.
Yeah. So you really dive into the systems. Is this what I'm hearing?
Like, I do, but I have to counterbalance it.
Sure.
Like I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about, like, well, if this happens, then what happens over here, and how do we make sure this happens? And you know what? I just saw this thing over here. I read this over here in Maine, and we should check.
Yeah.
I can wormhole that all day long.
Shiny object.
So I have to say, I get X amount of time.
Sure.
To look at that. And as I grew the team, and had employees, that became even more clear and easier to delineate, because then you're watching other people do it.
Right.
Yeah. You're just like, oh no, you're preoccupied with, I can't start until, well, I don't have my headshots and new business cards yet.
Yeah.
You don't need anything to go knock on a door.
No.
You need yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
That's all you need.
So you've obviously, it sounds like you've worked on your funnels. You've kind of decided where are your key pillars of business right now? How do you get leads? How are you doing it that you're attracting people to call you?
Well, this is really interesting for me right now, because in Maine, a huge amount of my business is past clients and referrals.
Yeah.
And so that is a thing I put a serious amount of effort into.
100%.
Being of service, educating people, making sure I'm there and enough in touch with where they're at in the journey that I'm not uninformed when they do reach out, right?
Yeah.
So in Maine, and I felt over the last couple of years this push and pull of trying to stay connected and relevant to my team members. Because I couldn't just be like, what do you do when you wake up? I don't do the same thing you do.
Right.
I have over 200 past clients. My morning is not going to be the same as yours. But how do I still be real to someone who started real estate yesterday?
Sure.
So I tried to force myself to do a certain amount of the prospecting activities, even though I didn't need to. And even though it wasn't actually the best use of my time, it was the best use of my time to stay real to my team.
Sure.
Right. But it always felt like a little bit of a conflict for me because I was like, man, the amount of time I'm spending doing this kind of lead generation, if I just did all of it over here, it would be better return for me personally.
Right.
But then, so I do that in Maine. Now that I've moved in Florida, I have no sphere. So I'm operating in both places. I'm back and forth. I have my team here. I have my team there. And I am like one of my agents in Florida, and I find myself, it's just call volume.
Yeah.
Like the number one thing I'm doing is how did I get somebody's information and how am I figuring out where they are in their process?
Sure.
And I'm just calling enough people to eventually have someone that's like, oh, you're a live wire.
Yeah.
What are we doing now? What's next?
Sure.
And then turn that into an appointment and then have a certain number of appointments, turn it into a certain number of clients and do that.
So let's focus on Florida because I like that. I like that analogy. You know, I'm a new agent in Florida because so many people are, you know, you're new in that area. So you are truly a new agent again.
Yeah.
So are you focusing on expireds down there? Are you focusing on for sale by owners? Are you focusing on just opening up the phone book and calling people? Are you going to networking events? What does that look like if you were a new agent? If you're a new agent, what are you doing?
So in Florida, I'm focusing on video marketing.
Okay.
Because as you know, and as we're doing here, people are finding information online.
Right.
In one form or another. And I find that it's very organic, which I think is super important. I'm connecting to people in something that's real to me.
Right.
So I just recently went through the process of taking all this information about Florida and figuring out where I might want to live. And then what neighborhood I want to be in. And then from there, what model would I necessarily want? And that's real for me. And it's very easy for me to connect and then expand upon it. So I'm doing video marketing about relocating to Florida and how do you go through that journey and what questions should you be asking and how can I answer them for you and how can I teach you about it? That's the first thing. And then I would say the phone book, yes, but I don't actually use the phone book. I'm getting cheap lead sources that are opt-in leads, which is kind of the modern phone book. You can't just call the phone book now and text the phone book and email the phone book.
Sure.
So I'll be like, what's the least expensive way I can get an equivalent in 2023 of people that I can go through to find active people.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and then back home, you're focusing on your sphere, past clients, and referrals.
Yes. So in Maine, I am always trying to inform people. And I'm always trying to be informed about our business, but then know that people don't want to hear real estate every day.
Right.
So I started something maybe 2 years ago now called Real Talk, which I did for about a year, which was like, what is a modern topic and how does it relate to real estate? And so I'm not doing that series anymore, but the concept I still, every week with my team, I read a ton and I'm like, what's going on? How does this relate to us? And then how can you carry this conversation to people so that you're something that's actually affecting them, something that's real to them.
Okay.
If they don't happen to want to move tomorrow. Right. How can you bring that back to their general topic of real estate?
So it's providing value.
Yeah. Providing value, but I try to not do just a quarterly update.
Right.
That's an element of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, we have been pretty consistent with regular events.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to connect with people. It's a good way to connect with my team. It's a good way to actually have fun. And again, it's real to me.
Yeah.
That's what I would say to people listening right now. Whatever you do, it has to be real to you.
Sure.
I really do go to the places that I then invite people to with my family, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard for me to be like, hey, do you guys want to go hang out here this day?
Right.
Because I would have, like, the funny thing is, like, my sisters come to our client events, right? Events are not for everybody.
Right.
The same kind of event is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, this weekend, we're doing a fall festival at Wallingford's.
Okay.
Well, the 3 years before this year, I went there with me and my three sisters and our families.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually just inviting more people.
Sure.
I'm actually just putting a little bit more organization to it.
Sure.
I'm just making sure that we show up with a couple more pumpkins and paint, right?
Right.
But like, that's what I would want to do, and it's real to me.
Sure.
So make sure that whatever your thing is, it's like real to you, and then you're connecting to your audience through that. Because if you try to find somebody else's thing, which I've been guilty of doing as well,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to stick with it. You're not going to feel real doing it. Your clients are not going to connect to you through it.
Yeah. So this is my 18th year. I've been doing a Christmas party.
Yeah.
That benefits Toys for Tots.
Yep.
And I invite all my past clients, well, most of them. I've got 170, I sell out at 175 people. I've been selling out for 17 years.
Wow.
And I charge to go to my client event, so I charge $100 to come to the client event to pay for the party. And then whatever's left, we give to Toys for Tots. And then on top of that, we raise money to give to Toys for Tots. And last year we raised $45,000.
Holy crap.
For Toys for Tots. And the year before that, we raised $40,000. So I've been doing this for 18 years, and I was adding it up, and I'm close to probably $300,000 given to Toys for Tots in the state of Maine. And what's amazing is it stays here in the state of Maine. So like we have risen the bar in the state for, Toys for Tots in the state of Maine gave out 15. They supplied toys to 15,000 kids. I mean, that's huge.
It's amazing.
So like what you were saying, like something that is that you feel. I feel that. Like it's like we're doing good here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just having, don't get me wrong, it's a party. It's live band and past hors d'oeuvres and open bar, we're having a great time. But at the end of the day, we're doing really good stuff for Maine kids.
Yep.
So, I love what you said about you got to feel it. I mean, I feel it, and I put a lot of work into it and effort into it, but like the payback is huge. And it's not the money that comes, it's not the fact that I'm staying in touch with my clients and, hopefully real estate business comes out of it, because it does. It's the feeling that I get from the party, and being able to see all those people and interact with them, and, that it's not just it sounds like you and I we treat our businesses very similar, which is, man, I'd love to do 200 transactions a year and be this transaction broker that just like turns and burns. But then I'm like, no, that's not me. It's really not me. I want to get to know the people that I'm selling houses to. And I want to take the time, and I want to know about little Billy breaking his arm and all that inner workings of a family. So that's really interesting. I love that, you do what you feel. So,
and though it has to be profitable.
100%.
Because I've also been guilty of that with pipelines, kind of to go back to systems, where I'll do a pipeline because I like it or because I think it's a good idea. And I'm not always tracking numbers enough to say like that's not returning to you.
Right.
Right. Or it's not returning to you in it doesn't always have to be money.
Right.
But in some way, are you getting return on that? So if you're going to be someone who doesn't do 200 and you're going to do 40 to 60, then you have to make sure that what you're doing, it justifies having those kind of clients.
It's very purposeful.
Yes, because you need to make money at what you're doing.
Correct. Hey, thanks so much for watching the show today. If you ever want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate in the greater Portland area, please reach out to us here at Danbury Guerin Real Estate Advisors. Our phone number, 207-553-2400, or you can always email us at team@danburyguerin.com.
The Seven Figure Real Estate Podcast and the CE Shop have partnered to provide you guys with awesome real estate licensing education. So wherever you are in the U.S., if you are looking to get your real estate license, make sure to check out the CE Shop and you can start your real estate journey today. We have links in all of our descriptions. So if you're interested, make sure to scroll down, click the link, and get started.
How do you track your event? How do you know if the event that you did is profitable? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I don't know that I have a short answer for you. I feel like this has become increasingly difficult in general with what we call, the touches or the SOI. So I'll put a video out on Instagram, and to me, that has an expense. It might not be actual money, but if I'm spending something on something, I want to know how it's returning.
Yeah.
Impressions aren't the real thing, though.
Right.
And also, people are voyeuristic, right? So I like, for the last couple of years, I put a large amount of effort into that space. And at first, I remember feeling like I'm not getting a return here. And then I would hear, like, a year later, someone would send me the thing and they'd be like, oh, I watched your real talk and I loved when you said this. And I'm like, if I had been following the old school way, I would have quit this a long time ago, because I tried for 90 days and I didn't see any return. So the same thing with the events. Do people show up? Do I have like a raffle where you have to give me 3 referrals to get into it? And if I don't get at least 3 referrals, like, no, I don't. I'm not. To me, it's overall in the grand picture of my past client referral and re-referral, are my numbers average or above? And if they are, some element of what I'm doing has to be working.
Right.
And if I do something for a while and it doesn't even, I don't feel it, or I think my people don't feel it, then I put that to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's not always, I did this, I got a referral. I did this, I got a referral.
Understood. So I held a wine tasting event one year, and it was, the way I did it was okay, I kind of looked at my database. I'm like, oh, this person's referred me 4 people. This is, because I track that. Like, I know that I know who my referring people are.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy's giving me 10 pieces of business. This guy's giving, like, this gal's giving me 13 pieces. Like, I know that avenue. So, like, I get them all together. And it was you. So it's I've heard people call American Express, or not American Express, American Airlines has their their A list. The people that fly 100,000 miles or whatever that is, right? They get access to the concierge lounge and the massage chair and all this other stuff. So it's kind of like you're creating that, for these people. This is the cream. You're like, I'm going to support that activity because those activities are supporting me. Yeah. So that's really interesting that it's okay. I'll look at, how those people are touching me, and, how the referral base out of the whole system, am I getting the referral count that I should be getting out of it? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And does it make me want to do what I should do? So if I try to hold an event, or if I try to do a touch and I find that I'm not actually doing the activity,
sure,
whether it's a call or a text to somebody, then something about that I have resistance to, or I know the people have resistance to it. So that's another something I measure. If I feel like I want to do this, I want to make these calls, I want to talk to these people, then I'm going to stick with that. Something can be a great idea, but if you don't follow it through, it's not going to matter.
It's funny. I was listening to somebody talk about their Facebook page, and their rule was, if their birthday, because the birthdays show up on Facebook, it's like, if I don't want to wish them a happy birthday, then they shouldn't be in my friends list. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So you call it by like, if I'm not willing to just type happy birthday.
You don't even type it. You just post the now it just first it was like one thing that didn't sound like me. That was the auto message.
Yeah.
And now it's like 5 options. And I'm like, I would actually exactly type that thing, but I feel weird sending that message.
If I'm not willing to push that button, they shouldn't probably be in this pile.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super, super funny how, people like categorize things and do things. So in your database, do you just focus on those 200 people, or are you like, do you have a database of 10,000 that you're mailing, or or how are you organizing your database? Because it definitely sounds like you're working out of a database.
Not well enough. So are you familiar with Ylopo?
No, I'm not.
Ylopo is they call themselves a lead generation platform, but essentially you get a link that represents that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they click on a property or if they look something up, it's going to somewhat intelligently react to them and then let you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we use that for like the broader database.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can get that. They get their own little link. And now I know, and it's very easy for my team to see like who's been active.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a priority because that person has leaned in some way.
So can you spell that for me? Ylopo?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly like it sounds.
Okay.
And there's other stuff like this. This is not super novel. Like any sort of website that has an IDX can do something like this. This just happens to be sort of plug and play.
Sure.
So I use that for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the automation without over automation and AI without over AI, I find useful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally at this point love like extensive automated chatbot. Like I just feel that it can be defeating.
Yeah.
But I do like if somebody clicks on something, them getting a follow-up email. That's fine. That makes sense. And it's one thing, and it's obvious, and it's self-admitting this is an email because you did this thing.
Right.
Not trying to be something it's not.
Sure.
Authenticity. I just keep coming back to that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
be real.
In what we do and who we work with. If you're asking someone to trust you, you can't approach them unauthentically.
Yeah. What's the number one thing a consumer is looking for out of a realtor? Is honesty.
Right.
The number one. So I love that you're like, I automate, but it's at a certain point, it's, oh, hey, here I am. It's not just they're sent into the ether and they're kind of like in this mill, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to trick them into thinking through super AI that they're having a conversation with me.
Right.
That's just not personally how I do it.
Sure.
I do want to garner information. I do want to automate the process of, qualifying, if you will, as much as possible so that when I step to the table, I already have, I need to call them about this, and this is when they want to move, and that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So anyway, we use that for the database. Newsletter.
Yeah.
Which to me is always changing.
What do you use for your newsletter?
So I use a couple of things. Substack.
Okay.
Do you know Substack?
I do.
So I have a Substack that goes out to people who opt in for it and they know what they're getting.
So you're writing your own Substack?
Yeah.
Nice.
I could be more consistent with it if I'm being honest, Nick.
Yeah.
But it all started with, again, what is real to me that I want to do? Well, what is real to me? I wake up and I read a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And then what is real to me? I'm always trying to boil that information down and share it to my team members because I know not everyone does read that much, but they should know it.
Yeah.
And then if I'm doing that, I'm doing all this effort. How can I do that together for them? Well, then I'm going to weekly do an update for them. Well, if I'm doing that for them, why can't I turn that into something that more people could have if they wanted it?
Sure.
Right?
You're doing the effort, so maximize that effort.
Well, and it's something I believe in. Sure. And I would want to do anyway. It would be hard to make me not want to wake up and be like, what's going on?
Right.
It's just, you know.
Yeah.
So I've taken that natural exercise, been strategic about it, turned it into something for my team, and then I've turned that into who might want to learn about a little bit higher level real estate information.
Sure.
Economic information. Then we have a more general newsletter that goes out through constant contact
Mhm.
of your typical market update, what's going on with us. That is something I'm constantly looking at.
Mhm.
I would say another thing I've learned is to have process,
Mhm.
but that your process needs to be malleable.
Okay.
Like if you have a base,
Mhm.
a great example is like these tripods.
Right.
All these, like, you don't want to have to build a tripod every time, but all these tripods have the same screw. So I can put every industry cam on top of it.
Right.
Something about your system should be the tripod, but something should also be the camera you can swap out.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So that's how my newsletter kind of is. Like people are changing what they want to look at. People are changing what they're over bombarded with. People are changing, what they'll opt in and opt out of.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, well, do they want local information about local businesses, or do they want economic information, or do they want entertainment, or do they want to hear about their pet, or is it all the above? Do they want to hear about me?
Sure.
What do I want to talk about?
Right.
Yeah.
Are you using anything like Keeping Current Matters or anything like that, or are you doing your own research?
I find that I have a fear of Keeping Current Matters because it is so used in our industry by our people.
Yeah.
So I'll see the exact same
That's where
post,
I'm at now.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't use Keeping Current Matters. Oh God, I'm about to publish it. I use Market Briefs.
Yeah.
And I read that, and then I
read Keeping Current Matters because it,
right.
It,
but I'm not going to share that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the whole sharing the thing.
Right.
So I read Market Briefs. I read list reports.
Mhm.
You get that one from a lender.
I don't
That's
know.
great.
Yeah.
And then there's some Wall Street publications or newsletters I'm on.
Sure.
The funny thing is, when you start regularly reading that stuff, like 536, 80% of it's the same information.
Sure.
People are watching the same measurements, the same announcements. But I just find that, and it's in having multiple sources, I have found to be important for both my team and my Substack when I put the Substack out, because imagery, presentation of information, sometimes I prefer this, sometimes I prefer this person's. It's not like I just take this and regurgitate it.
Yeah.
It's not always that's the best. So I have a couple that I draw from that keep me informed. And sometimes I end up wanting to look further. Like there might be a headline about rental numbers, and it's only like a headline and then a follow-up sentence. And you're like, that wasn't an article.
Right.
And then I go look it up because I'm like, I didn't know that.
Right.
And I'll read an actual article about that thing.
Sure. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that being an expert in your field is important. And you're doing that by consuming information on a daily basis. When you wake up, it's like one of the first things that you do. You interact with the real estate world, you understand the real estate world, so you can then turn that information into value for your team, but also for your client.
Yes. And that's important to me.
Yeah.
I don't know that's important to everybody.
I would argue that it should be. I would argue that it should be, because if you want to be considered an expert, you need to be an expert. And the way to be an expert is you need to consume information and data in your field. If you're going to be in the grocery store and you bump into somebody in the freezer aisle and they're like, oh, hey, you sell real estate. What's the market doing? You should be able to communicate on that. And I remember one day it was like, you might probably get this question all the time. And so it's just like, oh, did you see the house on 123 Main Street? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you know how many houses are on the freaking market? Like, no. But I make it a point to get out and look at property on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
In this segment of the market that I want to know about. So I can speak intelligently on that property. No, I didn't see that one, but did you see the one on, it had a beautiful blah, 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 or whatever that looks like. And you can do that now on the MLS, but I actually like to go walk through the property. I don't mean to be, give you pushback on that, but I think that most of the agents need to step it up a rung.
Yeah. I mean, I think knowing what the interest rate is essential. I think knowing the basic economic terms is essential. But what I would go beyond that in terms of not for everybody. Both you and I are team leaders. Both you and I work with buyers and sellers. Both you and I work with investors at a high level. Both you and I are investors.
Yeah.
right? So there's very little tangential to our industry that doesn't relate to us.
Sure.
I would say going to your grocery store thing.
Yeah.
You're like the store manager.
Mm-hmm.
What about a showing agent? They're like the guy who works in the freezer section. If I ask the guy about in the freezer section
Mm-hmm.
about what they have over in vegetables, he's not going to know.
Sure.
Nor do I want his level of knowledge to be as deep there as it is here.
Sure.
So I think we have to be aware of what is our vertical,
Mm-hmm.
if we have one, and go deep on that information.
Okay. Fair
You know
enough.
what I mean? And don't necessarily feel, because there is this other thing that can happen to you in the age of information where you feel like you have to know everything.
Sure.
You feel responsible that, I just heard that and I didn't know. It happens to me anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that yet. What the heck? Or
Right.
I didn't get AI working for my business enough yet. And I didn't
Yeah.
But if you're an agent who just shows property
Mm-hmm.
as a showing assistant in South Portland,
Mm-hmm.
no more of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
No,
I think
know
that's
your lane.
the balance, right?
Yeah. So you just said that you're an investor. What are you liking to invest in? What are you looking for currently? What are some big wins that you've had in the real estate investing world?
I'm currently looking to develop property
Mhm.
in probably the southern Maine or where I'm in Florida. Find something where I could build a 12 and then have room to do 2 more 12 units on it
Mm-hmm.
and do new construction multifamily.
Yeah.
And I want to do that to 1031 out of my smaller.
Yeah.
But I say that, and I think that it's really important that people know that the answer to this, like I remember I used to ask like investors, well, what should I invest in right now?
Sure.
And the guy owns, 700 units.
Yeah.
Has the capability of building a 200 unit.
Sure.
So it's not the same. So when I say I want to build a 12 unit that eventually could be a 24 or 48 or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's only because I already bought single and duplexes and triplexes and quads, and I have a 6 that I can 1031 out of.
Correct.
But I couldn't have started
No.
with a 12.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just where I am because of what I want. I want to consolidate my portfolio. I want to consolidate my management. I want to go a little bit newer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have an economy of scale,
Sure.
but I needed to do what I did to be where I am, to go where I'm going.
Right. Yeah. So the one of the comments I say to a lot of first time buyers, and they come into the office and they're like, "Oh, I want to buy my house," and I'm like, "Have you ever thought about a multifamily?" Like, because that's really where the angle you should go. Like, you really should look at those 2s, 3s, and 4s.
Yeah.
And so many people are like, yeah, no, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to be a landlord. And this has kind of been a topic that keeps coming up. And it's like, I cannot say it enough, people. Bite the bullet, live in the 2, 3, or 4 unit for a couple years, go buy another 2, 3, or 4 unit for a couple years.
It will change your life.
It will change your life, and it will change your child's life.
And the frustrating thing is it's not like most of those people I speak to ended up avoiding that lifestyle for 4 years.
No.
There's people I met at the beginning of my career that were like, well, I guess, we need to get a little bit of a raise. We need to save a little bit more because we really want to have that cape that's built after 2000 with 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. Like that's the home we want to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go do that for 3 more years,
Yeah.
4 more years, whatever. And I'm like, you actually lived in an apartment your damn self that whole time.
Right.
You had the lifestyle you would have had. You just didn't own it.
Right.
And
what do they say? You were paying a mortgage, but somebody else's.
Right. And so I think that people avoid this and then they end up sitting in a situation that's very similar to the one you would have had. And I also think it's really important to differentiate between people who are house hacking, which I don't know if did you ever tune into my House Hack Me?
No.
So I had a month last year after Real Talk, I did House Hack Me for about a year.
Okay.
Which was like every month I would talk about this exact topic. How do you make real estate work for you and lower your monthly costs?
Right.
When I would talk to people about it, they would always bring up a story about someone who owned 15 units. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, owning a duplex in Saco is not the same as owning 15 units in Lewiston. It's just not the same thing.
Right.
Like, how many of you complain about your neighbor and don't get paid for it?
Right.
Like, that's what you're going to be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be your neighbor who happens to pay half or more of your mortgage.
And what I find, though, is if you're living on property, they usually stay in line.
Sometimes. If we're going to be real, and they find out you own it and you're next door, they can become really needy.
Oh, I'm super upfront.
Yeah.
I live here. No parties, no hanging out. You got a problem with that, you don't have to stay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm super upfront about it. I'm like, this is where I'm living. This is where I'm raising my family. Just so you know, and granted, maybe I've been lucky, but I know that's the way I approach it. That's the way I approach it.
Yeah. I wish it didn't have a stigma.
Yeah. It blows my mind, especially with the change in the financing rules now.
5%.
It's no MI. I mean, it's huge.
Yep.
Like you can go buy you can go now buy a $500,000 duplex with $30,000, where that usually was 50 or no, like 100.
Yep.
I mean, that's just mind blowing to me. And if I really think if more and more people took advantage of that, it would be a change. Now, granted, in the market we're in right now, there's not a whole lot of multifamilies out there in the world. But that doesn't mean you can't try, because it's so hard to go from I'm going to buy the single family home and then I'm going to go get the investment property, because then you do need the 25% down, because no bank is going to be like, you're not leaving a single family to go live in a multifamily. You're not doing that. So it's so much easier to be like, oh, I'm going to buy one multi and then go buy another multi and then I'm going to go buy another multi, because they can see that you're living in a multi. So why wouldn't you live in another multi? And it's the whole delayed gratification. And that's something that we really struggle with as a human race.
Mm-hmm.
That's
why we have over $1 trillion of consumer credit card debt.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
I want it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's really hard. Investing. Any big win stories? Any horror stories?
Oh, God. I did a flip this past year that wasn't a horror story, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
I went into it thinking I had been conservative enough in my estimations, but it was further away from me than I would have wanted to actually drive. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm going to pay someone to do the work. I'm not going to be the person who tries to do it all. So I don't need to be on site. People are doing this remotely. Why can't I? Mm-hmm. And then I was driving an hour and 20 minutes to Denmark multiple times a week, and just like, why? Mm-hmm. So I personally would not do that again.
Yeah.
I think because of the kind of flip it was, having it near me would be pretty important to me.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who are doing it remotely. Not necessarily me, not this kind. I underestimated just how wrong mechanical stuff could go. Mm-hmm. It had been inspected, and so I thought this will be fine. I ended up having to replace the well pump. Mm-hmm. I ended up having to replace the pressure tank. I ended up having to replace the water heater. Mm-hmm. All things that were just not in my budget that had worked.
Yeah.
But you went through a winter, whatever, that just so happened that they all
failed.
So my plan adjusted, my timeline extended.
Yeah.
And the lesson to me would be do something close to you.
Yeah.
Assume you're going to have to replace all that stuff.
Sure.
If it's more than a couple years old, put that on the budget and then be surprised when you don't have to.
Sure.
Other wins in the investment world. Last year for my team, I had a goal that everyone on my team would own real estate.
Yeah.
And it was like a goal that I hadn't told them. And then everyone ended up buying an investment property.
That's great.
And it has been great because they went through struggles, and they kind of felt like a little bit like me. Oh my God, prices are so high. Now they're all looking back at prices and interest rates, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I pushed myself to do that last year. And I am now a real estate investor, and I've done that. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was a huge win to watch them.
That's great.
Like become an investor.
That's
you know?
awesome. That's awesome. That's great. Sounds like you have a really great culture on your team.
We try.
Yeah. So you're opening up in Florida, and all I can think too about Florida and Maine is the snowbirds. You know, my folks used to winter in Florida. Do you have plans to have a pipeline of leads coming back and forth?
That's the exact word I would use.
Yeah.
People, when they heard about Florida, they're like, oh, you're moving to Florida. I was like, no, actually, I'm just expanding I'm adding a pipeline to my business.
Yeah.
I know what the customer is.
Mm-hmm.
I know how I want to appeal to them, and I'm just going to open up a new pipeline.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a someday person in Florida. I'm like, well, someday you have $250,000 of equity in your primary residence right now.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you cannot use that to buy a second home in Florida that cash flows you even if you're there 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You can make money, pay off the line you needed to do it, but everyone assumes there's all these barriers to this.
Mm-hmm.
So a pipeline that is very specifically targeting that person.
Nice.
Do you someday want to be here? Why is that not today?
Right.
And
Why the delay?
Could that be today?
Yeah.
Like, and what else are you like? The thing that people don't realize about equity in their home is that it is, if you wouldn't put $400,000 in a bank account and be like, that's a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, I need to do something with this.
Right.
The equity in your home, when it gets that big, like you can do something with it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's another investment,
Mm-hmm.
what you like.
Yeah.
So what I want to say to them, especially baby boomers, have so much equity in their homes.
Yeah.
They don't, especially with the trap right now of interest rates and downsizing, and they don't really want to let that go.
Yeah.
Because they have this rate on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they have this home that they're finding someplace else is going to be hard. But what about using part of it
Mm-hmm.
to get something else you would like?
Yeah.
And making that thing work for you.
That's really interesting. And I wouldn't even say just baby boomers. I would target people our age.
Yeah.
Because my wife and I, we were talking about this just 2 days ago. We're sitting around at a table, and I said to her, I was like, we need to start thinking about, do we want to retire here, or do we want to retire somewhere else, or do we want to retire in both places? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, we should pinpoint what city we could see ourselves living 6 months a year in.
Do you know when the real like moment for me was?
Yeah.
I was trying to decide when I would be where and how I would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had a relatively typical week.
Yeah.
Where I was in the car like 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because my team covers easily York, Androscoggin, and Cumberland County at a minimum.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to a listing appointment with somebody, or if I'm going to see like it's just right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a day here in Maine.
Yeah.
And what is that in gas? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know that it's like a 3-hour flight to Florida?
Yeah.
And I rarely am over $100 for that flight.
Yeah.
I'm just expanding the way I think about it.
Right.
I need to be here. Fine. It's just different. I want to be here for this. I want to be here for this. Why can't I?
Right.
I 100% can.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah. I think opening your eyes to that potential, just the ability, because especially like people our age, if you're renting that place out you bought in Florida, it will be paid for by the time you're ready to be done. It's opening your eyes to the fact that you don't have to continue to do it the way you've been doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or helping other people to open their eyes to that.
Right.
If we're talking to professionals here.
Zig Ziglar said, give it out in slices, it comes back in loaves. If you help enough people get what they want, you're going to get what you want. It's just that simple.
So when are you going to buy a place in Florida?
I don't know if Florida's for us. We were looking at Charleston. We were looking at Savannah. We were looking at, I don't know if I want to go that far south. But I still want fall. I still want, a 50-degree day, and you get those in Florida. Don't get me wrong. But it's kind of, we are also saying, expand the, what about Italy? What about France? What about, it doesn't, anywhere. Let's just but let's get it and start renting it so somebody else is paying for it. Because we're just burn and runway here. I'm not getting any younger. We got 25 years to get this thing paid off. And obviously you can accelerate that and all of those hacks and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying, like if you're looking at it, it's like, okay, we got an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old.
8.
Yeah. Dude.
8 now?
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And he's an absolute animal. But, 1 and an 8-year-old, and like college is 10 years away. So like, if we want to set this stuff in motion, we got to start setting this stuff in motion, because we're going to have bills coming up. We're going to have a big bill coming up.
What criteria are you starting with beyond I would want to be there? What's the next? What's 2, 3, and 4? 2, 3, and 4
are rentability. Water.
How are you looking at that?
I'm looking at that through House Canary. I don't know if you've heard about it, but House Canary, they do market research on rentals. Rentometer is another one, or rentometer.com is another place that you go to look for rentals. But, there are certain things. And then I look at other investors. Like, where are other investors going? Like, there's a big investor in the city of Portland that's looking at, is it Wilmington? Yeah, Wilmington.
North Carolina.
Yeah. He's like, "What?" I was like, "What was that?" He was like, "Well, the rents are good. Property values are still down. It's on the water." But I mean, blah, 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 blah. I was like, "Okay, maybe I should be looking at this."
Right, and when the studios pulled out, there's a redevelopment still happening there.
Yeah.
Have you looked at Air DNA?
I have looked at Air DNA. I do not. I'm one of those guys that hates to buy subscriptions all the time. So like, I have not. I've played with the free subscription a little bit, but I'm like, I should just get it. I should just buy it, because that would really help. The other one that I really want to dive into, and I have not yet, is PropStream.
Mm-hmm.
That looks really cool and like really, really interesting about, ways that I can find. I can find property here too. Like, I can use it. It would truly be a write-off for my business. It wouldn't just, because I could use it here as I'm using it in other places trying to find things. But Michael, I don't want to eat up too much from your time. Thank you so much, man. This is great. Where can people find you?
People can find me at Home Sweet Maine. At Home Sweet Maine is the Instagram. That's probably easiest, because everything else is there. And I appreciate coming on today, man. It's been good to see you.
Yeah, it's been so great, and long time coming, and we'll do it again. And obviously this is awesome, man. I'm so happy that you're growing and your business is growing, and you're killing it.